Good afternoon, folks, and thanks for joining us. We are the MMA Sucka podcast. My name is Tim Wheaton, joined as always by the bad back to my good painkiller, the Frazer Krohn. How you doing today, man?
Yeah, we're a little bit late this week. We usually obviously release a show on a Monday. It's Wednesday today, but I had a little minor day surgery, so we had to put it off. But we've just set off a pretty stacked UFC card this weekend. We've got a little bit of boxing to get into, so we weren't going to cancel the show. I'm looking forward to breaking it down.
Absolutely. You are the unstoppable zombie, and I'll be the tactician who's going to win. But man, let's start right from the top if you're into that. Alexander Volkanovski getting a late replacement against formerly Max Holloway, and now it's the Korean zombie Chan Sung-jung, who has been a staple in the UFC and WEC for more than a decade. This guy was main eventing in like 2011 and 2009. This guy has been around the UFC for a long time. We've seen him go from a young, plucky brawler to a good counter submission person to a slowed down, more patient fighter in more recent years. He's had bad knees. He served in the Korean military, so he had to take time out. He's had a really interesting career, and he's always a fan favorite and kind of always brings it. What do you see in this matchup?
Yeah, it's a strange one because, you know, if you look at the guys' resumes, Jung's coming off a one-fight winning run against the Dan Ige, who unfortunately isn't a title contender and isn't trending towards that way at all.
Wasn't like an impressive win. He kind of
it's very standard. Kind of used his size against a former bantamweight Ige, and yeah, kind of dominated that in the wrestling game, as it were. But you know, he did have that loss against Brian Ortega in the main event when after Ortega had come off a long layoff, and that Ortega was impressive in that, and Jung barely managed to get anything off. He was nearly finished with that spinning back elbow, and it's a strange one for me. I think there's arguably better competition for Volkanovski to face in the featherweight division. But with that being said, I'm not mad about the matchup at all. I think it's a really entertaining fight, and obviously, you may have noticed me and Tim have stepped slightly away from posting on MMA Sucka as regularly, but something that I'm always doing is every pay-per-view event, I'm doing a video analysis breakdown of the keys to victory for one of the fighters, either in the main event or in the co-main event, if that's a championship fight. And, you know, I was doing it for Alexander Volkanovski, and there's not obvious keys to victory for me. You know, I did one for Robert Whittaker when he faced Israel Adesanya, and that was to mix in the takedowns, to land those leg kicks. And for Volkanovski, it was a lot more difficult than any of the previous ones I've done. Not because there's not there's plenty of tape on him. He unfortunately for him, he rarely finishes the fight, but he hasn't got that one path to victory against Zombie where it's obvious, you know. A Colby Covington versus a Jorge Masvidal. Masvidal's got to try and avoid the takedown. It's simple as that. And if he does get taken down, he's got to punish Colby on the floor and get back up. And he wasn't able to do that. Now for Volkanovski, we know that he's got brutal leg kicks, and that'll sap the power out of Zombie's shots, because we know Zombie's got knockout power as well. But with that being said, Zombie's dangerous in the first 5 minutes, but he's never got a knockout after the first round. So, you know, Volkanovski has got to keep his distance. So one of the keys to victory that I picked up on is Volkanovski's got to keep his distance in the first round, and you can do that by landing the teep kick, but we haven't seen him do that too often in his career. But land the jab. He's got a really good jab. He doubled up the jab against Brian Ortega. He did a really nice step in jab against both Darren Elkins and against Chad Mendes, and it kind of wobbled Darren Elkins, and against Chad Mendes, he was able to, sorry, not Chad Mendes, Shane Young, he managed to step in and then get the clinch. And, you know, Zombie's power is, he's got short range power, as we saw against Dennis Bermudez when he knocked him out with that uppercut. But with that being said, if he's stuck in the clinch with Volkanovski, he's not going to be able to land that short range power. If Volkanovski can pummel under, you know, he is the smaller guy, only by an inch, which might come as a surprise to some people.
Yeah.
But
way different.
Exactly, yeah. And I think we're just used to seeing him, you know, Volkanovski, well, it's Brian Ortega is a tall guy and Max Holloway is a tall guy. He's used to being the much shorter fighter, so he may even have more success with the jab, more success with the leg kick. And he's got another thing that I picked up on was land the leg kick, because as soon as you land the leg kick, it takes the power out of Zombie shots. Now,
Mm.
He has a very good flow to when he lands the leg kicks, and he avoids the leg kick counter where there's, if you check out my article on MMASucka.com,
Link
there's
will be
two
down
clips.
below.
Link will be down below, my man. But yeah, there's two. It's not even a count. The way he avoids the counter. He lands the leg kick, and both against Ortega and against Holloway. Against Holloway, he switches stance to avoid the leg kick, and against Ortega, he just slides out of the way just enough so that Ortega almost overthrows on the leg kick. And it's a brilliant technique, and he's got the timing mastered. But I think that can be a really good sort of way to hack away at Zombie's legs in this fight. And like I say, you hack away at the legs of any opponent, and it's going to be a long night for them if they haven't got their legs underneath them. He landed when he fought Brian Ortega. He absolutely brutalized Ortega's legs, landing 48 of 57 leg kicks across the 5 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's taken into account that there was a lot of that fight was taking place on the floor. We know about the infamous guillotine of Brian Ortega that almost choked Volkanovski out cold, and we know at the end of that round, Volkanovski was raining down shots on Ortega. That fight didn't always play out on the feet, and yet he was still managing to land an average of just under 10 leg kicks a round, that's a lot.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's hard to make the case because all roads, when you're looking at tape and analyzing this fight, it's that Volkanovski is the better striker because he's the smarter striker. He overall has a full striking game, mixing high and low, mixing leg kicks like you were talking about. He mixes in clinches really well. The best tool that one has is the jab. And I feel like he has a really good jab because sometimes it's a soft jab, sometimes it's a faint jab, sometimes it's a powerful jab. He's switching stances. I want to make the case for Korean Zombie, but it's a really hard case to make on the feet. Do you think on the feet Korean Zombie has any chance? I'll make the case for him on the ground a little bit, but on the feet, this looks like a Volkanovski all day.
Yeah, I think Volkanovski can outpoint him and be the outside fighter in this one, like he was for portions of the Ortega fight and portions of the Holloway fight when he was having to fight on the back foot, but he was able to land those leg kicks and cut the angle and get out of there. But I'm not sure if Zombie has that third, fourth, and fifth gear in the later rounds. If he's losing the fight, he does seem to coast, which we kind of saw against Yair Rodriguez. He was clearly ahead in that fight, and although the finish of that fight was like nothing we've ever seen, that came about because he was kind of coasting to the finish, and he was celebrating a little bit with. If he would have kept his distance for one more second, even, he would have won the fight. And I'm yet to see Zombie kick on in that third round, fourth round, fifth round. He just keeps in the same gear. And against Dan Ige last time out, that was enough for him because Dan Ige couldn't also kick into that gear, and Zombie had, he'd got the game plan down to not have to kick into that gear almost, because like we say, he was 2 or 3 rounds up by the time the championship rounds hit, and then he could afford to coast through that, and he could afford to coast through that against someone like Danny Ige, who doesn't have the punching power of a Volkanovski.
Yes.
With him working with Henry Cejudo now and at Fight Ready, I'm not sure. I'm assuming Cejudo will be in his corner, but I'm not convinced that Cejudo and his team won't have got game plan B, C, D, E, and F for him. I'm assuming they'll have multiple different game plans. Right, we'll go out in the first round, we'll look to stand with him. If we're getting outpointed, maybe we'll mix in the grappling, because like you say, Zombie's grappling, I'd argue, it's a difficult one. Is it better than Volkanovski's? I think his submissions are certainly better than Volkanovski's. If you haven't seen Volkanovski try and hit submissions in the UFC as of yet.
Yeah.
But with that being said, neither guy looks to land the takedown. And in my article again, I said Volkanovski doesn't want to be trying to land takedowns because his takedowns accuracy is only 34%, and Zombie's got a 77% takedown defense. So that would suggest that if he does go for the takedown, it's not going to be successful. And if he does, Zombie won't think twice about wrapping up Volkanovski's neck. And yes, we know Volkanovski can breathe out of his ears, as we saw against Ortega, but there's only so many times that a man can breathe out of his ears. So I think the grappling prowess is slightly on in favor of Zombie, but again, I don't think it's too. I think the advantages for Volkanovski on the feet over Korean Zombie outweigh Zombie's advantages on the ground.
Well, there's a couple things I want to throw at you there, but yeah, I completely agree with on the pacing side of it, where Korean Zombie lets his opponent set the pace, whether it's to his detriment or to his benefit, whether it was like, and we're talking about really different style fighters, from Leonard Garcia to Jose Aldo. Both times he was happy to play in his opponent's game and never change pace. Brian Ortega, same thing. He was completely okay with, I'm probably a little bit behind and I'm not going to change my game plan because of it. We're not going to make adjustments through the fight. Dan Ige, like you said, didn't make massive adjustments throughout the fight, just kind of cruised in that one. Yeah, like you said, if he doesn't get that quick knockout, but on the ground, he has that. He's not grappling with people. He goes for the submission if you give him the availability, like we saw against Dustin Poirier and Leonard Garcia. I know that was a decade ago already, but he does show that if you give him the opportunity, he wants to end it. He's not looking to grapple or get up. He's going for submissions on the ground. And this was the only case I could make for the Korean Zombie. And I don't know. I think, but the thing is, we're talking about submission game versus a counter submission game. I think Volkanovski's counter submission game is stronger.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying. And, I think, he's lucky in a way that the Frankie Edgar fight, Frankie took that on short notice and he finished that, because we know that Frankie Edgar's pace would have just kept on increasing.
Yeah.
And in recent times, we've seen, obviously last time out, Renato Moicano and RDA. Renato Moicano on very short notice went 5 of some of the hardest rounds we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Zombie finished both of these rounds, but he finished Moicano in 58 seconds and Frankie just 3.5 minutes. He's lucky in a way that he didn't have to try and kick on to that second gear, especially against Frankie Edgar, because Edgar's going to keep a high pace irrespective of minute 1 and minute 24. He's going to keep that high pace up until the very, very last minute. In the 25th minute, he's going to be going as fast as he was in the 5th minute, for example. And I completely agree with what you're saying as far as Zombie, if we just look at the stats again, takedown average 0.82 per fight, per 15 minutes, submission average 0.7. He doesn't look like let's compare him to a Mackenzie Dern who's on this card. He doesn't look to chain submissions together like Mackenzie does.
True.
He looks to, okay, there's an arm that I'm going to take, there's a neck that I'm going to grab. Yeah. And he's not going in there thinking, right, if I do this, he might expose his neck, to which I can take it. It's, I'm going to try and use this moveset to get back to my feet where I feel most comfortable. Oh, Dustin Poirier's left his neck out there.
I'll go for it.
Oh, Leonard Garcia, might as well try a twister while I'm here, kind of thing. And that is all it was. You can't. I refuse to believe, the twister submission is a difficult one to even explain, but we know that it's essentially you're trying to take the back and you only have the one hook in. And so you have to put the opponent's arm behind your head so you can squeeze and sort of, contort the back. Now,
it looks
phenomenal submission to look at. We've only had 2 in the UFC from Zombie and Bryce Mitchell, but you can't tell me that he was looking for a twister going into that fight.
No.
And now, I refuse to believe that. And against Dustin Poirier, you can't tell me he was looking to see that Poirier was open to a D'Arce choke. Occasionally we do see fights where, Joanne Calderwood a few weeks ago lost by a rear naked choke, and she's lost, I think, 4 or 5 fights by rear naked choke. So we know that is a weakness of hers. So for Alexa Grasso to realise that, she probably felt quite comfortable going for the rear naked choke because it's a weakness in Joanne's game. With Zombie, I don't think he focuses on the submission defects of his opponents.
I think you're right about that.
He was never going to,
isn't it?
For sure, yeah. He was never going to submit Brian Ortega. Against Dan Ige, he controlled him for what seemed like the entire fight. From what I can remember, it's one of those fights that doesn't exactly stick out. But he had 10 minutes control time, and he tried 3 submissions, wasn't successful with any of them, and still wasn't able to get Dan Ige out of there.
Yeah,
I think, like you say, he's a much more opportunistic submission threat, and on the feet, if it doesn't happen in the first round, I don't think Zombie's power carries that well late into the fight.
Statistically, we've never seen that. Like you said, all of his submit, and I didn't even realize that. I've been a big fan of his, but I never put it together that all of his submissions are in the first, at latest 3 minutes of the entire fight. He's never had a
Yeah,
knockout
exactly.
later than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't
So
bode
it's,
well in this match.
you know, like you say, it's not to say that his power doesn't carry late, but we haven't seen it.
We haven't
You know,
seen it.
it's like saying, you know, we don't know that Francis Ngannou's wrestling game
And we were
wasn't
wrong.
and we were terribly wrong on that. So, you know, what? Just wait until the 5th round where Zombie gets a knockout in this one. But the previous, you know, he's a guy with what 23 fights now, even having taken that, you know, the military timeout. He's 35. I'd argue it's his last shot at the belt. 23 fights isn't that many for a 35-year-old. He's been fighting since, you know, 2007.
Yeah.
But with that being said, you know, I think he's still evolving his game. We saw him against Gennadiy Golovkin wrestle more than we've ever seen him wrestle before. And why is that? Maybe he was slightly wary of the speed of Gennadiy Golovkin, but maybe his power just didn't, like we say, his power just didn't carry down into that second and third round. You know, he landed one takedown in the first round, no takedowns in the second. He was then controlled Gennadiy Golovkin for 4.5, well, pretty much the whole round, 4 minutes 43 in the third round, which would probably suggest that, you know, he was either tiring in that third round, so he did look to take Ige down, or that he wasn't confident that his power was you know, carrying through. But, you know, we'll have to wait till Saturday night, because, you know, it's difficult to say to rule out Zombie, because, you know, like we say, since returning, he's got 2 losses on his record.
Yeah.
You know, he returned against Dennis Bermudez and knocked him out in the first round. He's got that Yaya Rodriguez loss. What can you say about that? He won that fight until the last second. He then knocked out Moicano, knocked out Frankie Edgar, and then was dominated by Brian Ortega. And I think that Brian Ortega fight, I'm not really sure what happened in that fight. Maybe Zombie didn't quite take Ortega seriously after Ortega looked so poor against Max Holloway, but he was dominated in that fight. And then he bounces back.
Is that he got hit in the first round and could never get his mind back after getting hit, which isn't a great. You don't love to hear that from professional fighters, you know, like, oh, I can't take punches well, is basically what he said.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, and then he like you know, that happened. If he gets hit like that against Volkanovski, like we say, it's probably his last opportunity for a title. It'd be his second time fighting for the title. Obviously, he fought Jose Aldo back in 2013, but
Yeah.
which is, yeah, I was going to say, which is crazy to think. Like, it's a Glover Teixeira situation almost all over again. You know, that's 9 years gap in between title fights, and he's still at the very top of the division. But you know, my pick will be Volkanovski. I can see him. I don't see him finishing Zombie. Unfortunately for Volkanovski, I think that's where he doesn't quite transition over into the best featherweights of all time, purely on his finish rate. You know, he doesn't have that one punch knockout power like a Conor, or that flash style like Jose Aldo, and doesn't quite have the personality of a Max Holloway.
No, but
which is difficult. But but then, you know, his skills are undeniable. But I do think Volkanovski will win this one pretty comfortably.
No, for every like 4 that we were trying to make for Korean Zombie, Volkanovski is shown to be he outstrikes the best tactical strikers, he outgrapples the best grapplers in the division. He's shown that he has determination when put in bad situations. He can adjust game plans on the fly. It's more so that we are saying Korean Zombie is definitely slowed down a bit, but Volkanovski is too good. He is that
for
good.
Sure.
He is legitimately good. I would say if we come in here on next week and talking about this amazing first round knockout from Korean Zombie, I think we're still going to go, yeah, Volkanovski wins a rematch. It doesn't matter. Like,
yeah, exactly. Better. Yeah, for sure. And it's like the Amanda Nunes, Juliana Pena thing all over again. Is Juliana Pena really better than Amanda Nunes? If Volkanovski loses this fight, is he really not as good a fighter as Korean Zombie? I think, like you say, should Zombie get the knockout, I think Volkanovski's probably beats him in the rematch. But we'll have to wait and see on Saturday night to see how that one does play out.
So the next fight, the co-main event on the card, do you want to talk about it, or should we just use the other 5 times that we've talked about this fight and just copy and paste those conversations in? Petr Yan is going to try to get a title from Aljamain Sterling. I don't know what to say on this fight. You know, we've talked about it before. We saw the fight previously.
It's a difficult one because how the first fight played out from round 2 is, I think, how this fight will play out from round 1. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
Aljo came out in the first round throwing insane volume. I think it was 83 strikes he threw in their first
Yeah. He was
for the
mixing
first round of
knees.
the yeah,
Oof.
and he did well. You know, he seemed to hurt Yan in that first round, but the accuracy just wasn't there. You know, yeah, he threw 83 strikes, landing just 34, whereas Yan landed half of what Sterling at 14, but he only threw 22 strikes. You know, 66% strike, um, significant strike accuracy against Sterling's 36, and
But that
that was
was
kind
that
of
was but he included Petr Yan only landed like 14 strikes compared to double that. But he landed a knockdown in that. And that's a really good
yeah, for
example of
sure.
what the career of Petr Yan is like. He's like throws one punch around and wins the round.
Yeah, exactly, and I think I think there's so many different factors into this, as in, Sterling had an absolutely horrible time trying to take Yan down. 1 of 17, 5% takedown accuracy, whereas Petr Yan, who's not known as a wrestler, 7 of 7 takedowns, including those what I call almost ego trips. You know, he just trips Sterling and doesn't even follow him down. He just trips him to let him know, if you get too close to me, I will just put you on your backside and
Yeah.
you'll have to reset. It was a completely from the first. I think even let's ignore the first round because that was an anomaly of the fight. Petr Yan dominated Aljamain Sterling, and we've got to remember that is the last time Sterling was in the octagon. Petr Yan's had that absolute war with Corey Sandhagen.
Look good.
And he looked exactly. He looked good. That was that was October of last year. This is a fairly quick turnaround. You think it's only 6 months, give or take, since he fought Corey Sandhagen to 5 hard rounds. He went 5 rounds, best part of with Jose Aldo before finishing him in the 5th. Yep. He went 4.5 rounds or pretty much four whole rounds with Aljamain Sterling, with the pace that Sterling was putting on him in the first round. All roads are leading to a Petr Yan probably late finish, to be honest, because Sterling was not taking the shots of Yan particularly well when they faced off. This was last March, so it's over. Is it? Well, it's actually 13 months to the day today that he knocked him out, they illegally knocked him out. And there's no denying the finish of the first fight. It's a neat, grounded opponent. The referee, empty arena. It was at the Apex, empty arena. There's no denying that the referee had said he's a downed opponent. He's a downed opponent. Then Petr Yan lands a knee. It's an illegal strike, and he deserves to be disqualified for it.
Yes, absolutely.
With that being said,
they're gonna act like he doesn't know the rules when he's fought in the UFC for like a dozen fights. He knows the rules. Anyway,
you don't make it to championship. Yeah, you don't make it to championship caliber by being a little unsure on the rules. I'm sorry, I don't buy that at all. But with that being said, I just can't see a key. The only key to victory for Aljamain Sterling that I can see, he's got 3 minutes at the beginning of the fight to jump on Petr Yan and try and get that takedown and get that submit, because we don't know how Petr Yan is defending submissions. He's got an 89% takedown defense. People have not traditionally taken him down and kept him down there and made him struggle down on the floor.
No one has. Even from ACB to the UFC, that's an impossible task.
Exactly. And the only, one of the factors in this fight, I'd argue, is the neck surgery that Aljamain Sterling's had. How much of an impact did that really have on his overall MMA game? Because he's had this neck surgery now.
Yeah.
But I am still struggling to make any sort of case for Aljamain Sterling, which is a shame because I like Aljamain Sterling's personality. His fight style is exciting. He goes out there, he's got flashy kicks and hands, and he throws spinning stuff and he lands takedowns. He's a solid grappler and he's cardio for days. But I just think Petr Yan's better. I think he hits too hard, and it shocked Sterling last time, and I think it will shock Sterling again this time.
Well, yeah, and what's funny? we talked about, I think the last time that they fought, that Sterling coming into this fight is the uncrowned champion because of how good his record was. Whereas Yan had really good wins over aging Faber and aging Aldo, whereas Sterling was coming in defeating the top of the division, guys like Pedro Munoz, Corey Sandhagen, he just submitted. Jimmy Rivera, he had submitted. Like these are, or Jimmy Rivera, he got a decision, but these are amazing wins. These are really impressive wins, and he was getting these submissions quick on these guys. He was like putting his game on them constantly throughout the fight. He was looking flawless in his 5 wins. And then in this fight, it was like or in their March 2021 fight, it was like all of his problems had now been exposed, where he was overcommitting on strikes and someone was punishing for it. If he couldn't get the takedown, he doesn't have a second answer for him. If he couldn't get he is being out grappled, he's being outstruck in this match. But I would love to see Aljamain Sterling win, just because Petr Yan fans are a little bit obnoxious. Is that fair to say?
I think it's completely fair to say. I think as much as I've ruled him out, I don't like it when people are ruling out Aljamain Sterling, because, like you say, his wins speak for themselves. The really Corey Sandhagen submission in a minute and a half. Yeah. Pedro Munoz dominated him pretty much over 3 rounds. Jimmy Rivera, Cody Stamann, Brett Johns. He had that shock sort of knockout of Marlon Moraes. Marlon Moraes had that shock knockout over him when he, it almost looked like he shot in and Marlon Moraes went for the high kick, but he landed the knee and it just knocked him out cold. And Sterling is the kind of guy that you want as your bantamweight champion, because he doesn't turn a fight. I've yet to see him turn a fight down. Yes, he cancelled the fight with Petr Yan, which obviously led to the Sandhagen fight. But he's, like you say, we were talking about him of being the uncrowned champion, and I'd still say up until Yan fought Sterling the first time, he's got no one really on his rep. John Dodson, Douglas Silva de Andrade.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Jimmy Rivera, an aging Uriah Faber that had no business being in there with anyone of Petr Yan's caliber, and then
correct.
Jose Aldo, which on paper is a phenomenal win for Petr Yan. But if you look, Jose Aldo coming off the loss to Volkanovski, coming off the loss at bantamweight to Marlon Moraes, he's 2 losses in a row, never won in the bantamweight division. He still gets an interim title shot. Didn't quite sit right with me, but since then he fought Sterling, he fought Sandhagen, and that Sandhagen fight could have, they threw everything. Sandhagen did outland him in that one fight, but he obviously just he did enough to win that fight. But I think, my heart says I'd like Aljamain Sterling to win, just because, or my heart says I want Aljamain Sterling to be 3 rounds up going into the championship rounds and see what Petr Yan's got. Because again, like we were talking about with Chan Sung Jung, we never really had to see Yan really go to the well, and against Corey Sandhagen to a degree, but he wasn't down in that fight. I want to see Petr Yan down 3 rounds in this fight and see how he can kick it into that second, third, fourth gear and be forced to look for the finish and be forced to look for the victory, because he hasn't had to, which is, it's no fault of his own. If you can get to a position where you can cruise fights, why not? If you're solid enough to win the first 3 rounds, more power to you. But I almost want to see him 3 rounds down to really see him tested, because, like I say, I don't really feel that we've seen him tested in the UFC thus far, apart from against Sandhagen at points. But even then, he wasn't ever rocked. He wasn't ever dominated on the floor. He wasn't hurt. The referee was nowhere near stepping in. It was just Sandhagen's activity that sort of seemed to ask Yan a few questions, which Yan just answered.
Completely co-sign with you. Like, there's not a lot of roads, despite Sterling. If you did like a pound for pound rankings all time, just based on quality of wins, Sterling might still be a bit higher than Yan. But in terms of skill for skill and what we've seen in the fight, I'm really struggling to pick the Funk Master here. And I really like the guy too. I like his gym. I like, I picked him the first time around. And I know people are, I think we've talked about it before as well, of like, he faked. People are saying he faked it. He got kneed in the head real hard. That's not fake anything, man. Like, he got
kneed for sure.
That was a good knee in the head.
And to fake it that in that split second, I've watched the fight back. I've watched the the countdown shows, to be needing the head like that and then to instantly go back and then to think in the moment, oh, I'm going to sort of fake not being able to see. And I'm not buying any of it. And, people are saying, oh, he's not the champion because he got win it by DQ. Well, they're the rules.
There's the rules, yeah.
If Yan hit him after the bell and knocked him out, would people say, oh, well, no, he's not the champion? Yes, he is. We saw it in the Jermaine Durandamy fight and Holly Holm, where Durandamy was constantly landing on Holm after the bell. She should have had a point deducted, which would have led her to not being the champion for the featherweight strap. But, taking it back to this one, John Jones, 12 to 6 elbows.
That's
we've seen plenty of disqualifications, unfortunately, in the UFC. These are the rules. Petr Yan knows the rules.
He knows
and
the rules.
In that, Aljamain Sterling was KO'd in that fight. And for him to say, no, I don't want the belt. And then probably when he was in the back and he realized, okay, maybe I was losing the fight. But the rules suggest that I am now the champion. And for him to then celebrate with the belt, in my opinion, was fine. If there's no difference to him, like I said, for me, there's no difference for him. Petr Yan landed multiple low blows or really bad eye pokes on Aljamain Sterling and being disqualified, to him landing the knee. If Yan doesn't know the rules, that's not Aljamain Sterling's fault. That's the fault of Petr Yan. It's the fault of Petr Yan's team, and it's a fault of Petr Yan's team when they have the fighter talks with the referee beforehand. To discuss, what are the, because it can be confusing for MMA fighters. What are the rules in this state? What are the rules in that state? What are the rules tonight? The referee will go into the locker room and explain, 3 points of contact, 2 points of contact, 4 points, explain the rules. But that was an illegal knee, and he got the warning.
Yeah.
The fair disqualification shouldn't have been a no contest, because he, where does it go? If Aljamain Sterling was winning that fight by 4 rounds to nothing and Yan lands that knee, does it still go to a no contest? No. Aljamain Sterling wins that fight. And, I don't like the way the first fight ended, because it wasn't conclusive, because we don't know what would have happened in the 5th round. Probably much of the same, but we'll never know. So let's hope that this Saturday we actually get a conclusive ending either way, Sterling or Yan. Let's hope that we can get a conclusive ending.
Let's put a bow on this series already. I think we're sick of that series. However, let's move forward into a hype train scenario. We don't know how good this guy is. He's overcome every test without problem. Who I'm talking about is Khamzat Chimaev, the blazing star. I think sometimes in MMA we get major stars who look like smashing machines. Guys like, on one side of my scale is going to be Roger Huerta and Sage Northcutt. And on the other side of my scale is going to be Cain Velasquez and John Jones. Some of these guys, through like their growing fight and their growing phases and coming up in the UFC, they look like smashing machines. And when they reach the top level, they can't quite perform, like Sage Northcutt, for example. Or Sage Northcutt's a good example. And then some of these guys just look like killers forever, like John Jones and Cain Velasquez. Where Khamzat Chimaev is, I think he's overcome everything so well. Li Jingliang is a good win, but what really put me over the top is Darren Till in training, saying like, no, he is that good. That has put me over the top. So if we're drawing a scale, I think Khamzat Chimaev is a little bit closer to the John Jones and Cain Velasquez size. And that is me. I'm not a hype guy. I am a snob when it comes to this sport. And again, it goes against what I say of like, we haven't seen it in the octagon. I think Khamzat might be the real deal. I am getting on the train, and I'm sorry to everybody. But what do you think of this matchup? He is fighting the top-ranked, number 2 ranked Gilbert Burns, multiple-time jiu-jitsu champion, former top contender. He's a real banger and a half. What do you think of this matchup?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we're the same. We've spoke on here about Paddy Pimblett. How yes, he's absolutely loads of hype around the guy, but who's he fought really? Absolute, with the greatest respect to his 2 opponents, nobody's.
Yeah.
Kind of the same case with Khamzat. Who's Khamzat fought in his first 2 fights? John Phillips, who has never been a wrestler, and Reece McKee, who has never been a wrestler. But then he fights Jared Milshat, who is a solid all-round UFC stalwart. And then he has all that time out with COVID, maybe even having to retire because his COVID symptoms were so bad.
Yep. And
then he returns against Li Jingliang, who's coming off a phenomenal knockout of Santiago Ponzinibbio. and he just literally picks him up, carries him over to his corner, and chokes him out unconscious. I mean, we can only really, I do agree with you saying when, Darren Till's like he is as good as he's looking in the octagon, but we can only judge what, you can be the killer in training, but that not transfer over to the octagon. True. He's doing both at the moment. He is doing both. And it's still, for me, the strike differential. John Phillips is the only person to land a strike on him in 4 UFC fights.
Yeah.
He... please, let's just take, if we're comparing that to, for example, let's just, compare that to his opponent Gilbert Burns in his first 4 UFC fights. I mean, in his first fight, his opponent landed 41 strikes on him.
Yeah.
He was then in his third fight landed, Rashid Magomedov landed 80 strikes on Gilbert Burns. I know these, you can't compare them directly, but to have only been hit with 1 strike in 4 UFC fights is insane. It is insane. And, and you look at someone, like a Li Jingliang, he doesn't fight. He's only lost to, Jake Matthews and Neil Magny before, in recent times before facing Khamzat Chimaev. He lands an average of 4.5 strikes a minute. And Chimaev just ducked into that first strike that he threw, landed 25 strikes and choked him out within just over 3 minutes. Are we going to see Khamzat Chimaev exposed, or are we going to see Khamzat Chimaev shine? That's the question for me, exposed or shine. Is he going to be exposed as, okay, once he fails on a takedown, if he fails on that takedown, because let's not forget, he's a middleweight that's boiling down to welterweight. He dominated Jack Hermansson in a wrestling match. I think it was the end of last year, maybe the beginning of this year. Jack Hermansson's not only a solid wrestler, but he's also a middleweight, a fully fledged middleweight. Gilbert Burns used to fight down at lightweight. Khamzat Chimaev's having to chop off a leg and an arm to get to lightweight. Yep. But Gilbert Burns, there's no denying that experience that Gilbert Burns has over Khamzat Chimaev. If you look at Gilbert Burns' last 5 fights, he's Gunnar Nelson, dominated Gunnar Nelson, dominated Damian Maia, knocked him out. 5 dominant rounds against Tyron Woodley. Pretty much dropped Kamaru Usman in the first round of their fight for the welterweight title. And then absolutely dominated Stephen Thompson, who we've seen is not an easy guy to take down. Now, going into this fight, if you're Gilbert Burns, almost pick your poison. Do you look to take Chimaev down, or do you look to stand with Chimaev? I really don't know. I'd love to get your thoughts as to, if you were Gilbert Burns, how you go about this one, because I wouldn't want to stand with Chimaev, having seen what he did to Gerard Meerschaert. I wouldn't exactly want to go to the ground with him just in case I get reversed and be on the wrong end of what he's done to everyone so far.
Yeah, it's an insane thing that so Khamzat Chimaev competed in Swedish nationals in 3 national championships and didn't lose a single match. Like, even Brock Lesnar lost matches when he was the NCAA champion. Like, it's a weird statistic that you don't lose a single match. And then, yeah, like you said, the Hermansson match, if I am in the corner, we haven't seen quite enough tape on Khamzat to figure out what a good game plan would be. But I think what Gilbert Burns was trying to do in his title fight against Kamaru Usman, of just, I'm just going to rush him, throw a right hand as hard as I can. I'm going to show respect to him by trying to knock him out in 25 seconds. Rush him, and you need to put him on the back foot, so I think he's always uncomfortable and not initiating. Land first and land last in exchanges. But yeah, Gilbert Burns, despite being a multiple-time jiu-jitsu world champion, we haven't seen him fight like it. He's fallen in love with his hands, and I don't know that that's going to benefit him a huge amount in this fight, because I don't think he's the better striker. I think there's a scenario in which he can force to be a better striker. Like I said, be aggressive, put your opponent on the back foot, land first and land last. But if you are going to play the counter-striking game, I think if Gilbert Burns is playing the counter-striking game, if he is being pushed back, I think it's going to be a bad night for our Brazilian boy. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think, we saw a little bit of his jiu-jitsu game against Stephen Thompson last time out, but
a little bit, yeah.
that wasn't quite, that was for me, that was that was wrestling. That wasn't jiu-jitsu. You know, he wasn't looking for the constant. You know, for me, a jiu-jitsu competitor, Mackenzie Dern, Damian Maia, they're working the submission for the entire fight, and that, you know, they are in search of that submission. With Gilbert Burns, it was a more Khabib style of, I'm going to swarm you, I'm going to not allow you to get up, and if you do get up, I'm just going to take your leg, and if I'm going to control your wrists. And I don't think he's going to be able to do that kind of wrestling style against Khamzat because of just the size. You know, Khamzat Chimaev is a big guy, and he struggles to get down. You know, we saw him last time; he had to get the towel out to get down to 170.
Yep.
I do agree with what you're saying, is be first and be last, but I don't think it would favour Gilbert Burns to get into an exchange with Chimaev, because if Chimaev lands on him again, it could be a long night for Burns. Or a short night for Burns even. You know, it's it's just, I wouldn't want to be Henry Hooft in Burns's corner, because it is a tough fight to stylistically plan for. You know, how you can't look at any of Chimaev's UFC fights to see how to beat him, because you beat him in the stand-up. Well, Jared Meerschaert would suggest that if you do attempt to stand with him and you do get corralled against the fence, he will knock you out cold. If you do go out there and swing a big right hand like Li Jingliang, he'll duck under it, he'll pick you up, he'll drag you over to his corner, and then he'll just stay on top of you. Sure. You know, he's had three fights. Two fights go out of the first round.
Yep.
John Phillips, but in that John Phillips fight, I think, you know, you can't take anything if you're Gilbert Burns from that John Phillips fight, because Khamzat outlanded John Phillips a total of 118 strikes were landed in that first round in favour of Khamzat. You know, what do you do with that information? And then he's also gone to the second round once in Brave, but he finished that within 1 minute 15 of the second round.
Yeah.
For me, if I'm Gilbert Burns, I make this a really boring fight, and I look to jab. I look to jab and get out, and jab and get out,
sure,
and leg kick and get out. And I don't want to exchange with Khamzat, because I don't want to, like you say, I think he's fallen in love with his hands, and I don't want to. If I'm Burns, I don't want to overthrow and get my leg snatched from Chimaev, because the evidence would suggest that he doesn't get back up. Then
yeah, I agree. And we're not hype writers, we're not trained guys, we don't do this kind of stuff very often, but I think Khamzat's the real deal. Like, and you and I don't get swept up. We are snobs when it comes to this sport.
For sure. And like I said, the suggestion is that he will go in there, he'll run through Gilbert Burns, and then he'll call out Kamaru Usman. But if I'm Leon Edwards, I'm having a rough week, or I'm definitely having a rough 15 minutes when those guys are making the walk. Because if Khamzat gets a dominant victory over Gilbert Burns,
no doubt,
don't be surprised to see Edwards leaped over, which is a shame for us Brits, but at the same time, sign me up. And if I'm Kamaru Usman and I see Khamzat Chimaev dominate Gilbert Burns, I'm calling Leon Edwards. Like, when are we getting this fight made then? Because at least he can put off fighting Chimaev a little bit longer.
I agree with you. Why break tradition of canceling Leon Edwards title fights? Like, we've done it. Why break tradition here? But no, I do think, Leon Edwards he's a great fighter. Great tactical fighter. Really good, great tactical fighter. He is a tactician in every sense of the word. But yeah, get that title defense in now so you can get it on your record, and then play around with Khamzat later, because man, I think he's the real deal. Man, I love your idea of jabbing and then running away. That was my strategy in Fight Night Round 4. That's why I built Fight Night. It's going to outpace these guys with one punch, and it worked. Okay, so let's move forward. A couple of other really good fights on the card. Mackenzie Dern, Tisha Torres, I think we'll talk about a little bit, but I really do like the Ian Gary and Darian Weeks fight. Ian Gary is a guy that I think you and I have bought into the hype. He's an undefeated welterweight from Ireland. He's shown really good promise. He's coming in against a fighter. He just lost to Brian Barberina by decision. This is a good fight for Gary here. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's strange to see that Darian Weeks has got less experience than Ian Gary, because
I thought that too.
Ian Gary's the prospect. But then if you go down and you look at Darian Weeks, he's multiple time IMAF competitor.
Yeah, true.
A big amateur pedigree of 15-3 as an amateur. 15-4 as an amateur, and then he won 5 fights in a row before facing Brian Barberena on short notice, and he went 3 rounds with Brian Barberena, which
That's pretty good.
As we saw last week or the week before last, Brian Barberena can still throw and bang, and to be facing Ian Garry, I think Darian Weeks comes in to this fight with nothing to lose. Ian Garry comes into this fight with everything to lose. Garry didn't look great in his debut, in my opinion, against Jordan Williams, but he managed to land the counter right, and it was a looping right cross, quite McGregor-esque, which is ironic with him being being Irish as well.
We got the comparisons up right away.
For sure, and at 24, he's moved over to Sanford MMA now. He's finally got a gym, because we know that he didn't have a gym. He didn't train with any sort of training partners for his last Cage Warriors bout. He's being put on these big cards, Ian Garry. I think his debut was at MSG in November.
That was a big one.
And now he's being put on another, comparing him to Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall fought behind closed doors for the first 4 or 5 fights of his UFC career. Ian Garry's fighting, debuting at MSG, now fighting again in Jacksonville. I think it's going to be a fairly easy night for Ian Garry, unfortunately for Darian Weeks fans. But I just think Ian Garry, he's going to take this week in his stride. He's obviously not going to, he's not going to have too much pressure with the 2 title fights and the Chimaev fight above him. You won't have to do too much media or do the standard amount of media that you would if he was on let's say he was on the London card. He'd probably be a main card fighter on that London card, and he'd get far more eyes on him. So I think Ian Garry probably does pick up the victory here. I'd probably say by finish. I don't think he'll get it done as early. He did get it done in the last second of the first round against Williams, but I think maybe a second or third round TKO for Ian Garry, and 9-0, and we'll look to get out hopefully in the summer, and hopefully it'll be on a European card, whether that's Glasgow that's being rumoured or Manchester or a Liverpool card, because being Irish, the Irish fans will travel over to the UK to support their boy, and don't be surprised to see Ian Garry in a co-main, or I don't think he's a main event fighter just yet, but don't be surprised to see him in a co-main or even slightly further down on the main card. They're not rushing Ian Garry. They're giving him the right fights at the moment, because like we say, yes, he's more experienced than Darian Weeks, but Weeks has got the amateur pedigree. He's not going to be. He's used to being in the octagon. He's not a 6 fight fighter, if that makes sense. Yes, his record stands at 5-1, but with 19 amateur fights, he's used to pulling on the gloves. He's used to making that walk to the octagon and fighting another man. So I think it's a good fight for Ian Garry, though. I think Darian Weeks does play into Ian Garry's style quite well. He does get hit, and Ian Garry does like to throw long combinations.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I think that's a really good breakdown too. I thought we were just gonna be like, yeah, Ian Garry, amazing breakdown. Let's do a little bit of Mackenzie Dern, Tisha Torres. Tisha Torres is coming in on a nice little 3-fight win streak. Mackenzie Dern coming off 1 loss in which she looked embarrassingly bad. But I think Dern, man, it's hard for me to pick Dern because I don't think she's got a good snap down. Like, she gets that submission and she'll get it, but everything else getting to that submission phase, she looks kind of bad. I don't know. What do you think of this fight?
Yeah, I was surprised to see, to be honest. A little spoiler. I'm just looking. There's 2, 4, 6, 7 people on our MMA Sucka.
I just changed it. What are you doing?
on our staff picks, there's been a lot of people picking Mackenzie Dern, and it's 4 votes so far to Tisha Torres and 3 votes for Mackenzie Dern, but Tisha Torres has got some of the best footwork in the strawweight division. She's not an easy girl to get corralled into a corner, and that's how Mackenzie Dern will win this fight if she does manage to press Tisha Torres up against the fence. We know Mackenzie Dern's wrestling is, for want of a better word, poor. She doesn't have a good wrestling takedown. She's got good jiu-jitsu takedowns from the clinch, and she has good wrestling from the clinch, but open mat wrestling, she's poor. Tisha Torres is a much faster fighter. She's got the much more well-rounded striking game. She can throw these kicks. She can throw the step in, the jumping Superman punches. Sorry, and she can be heavy when it comes to the top game. I wouldn't suggest that she goes anywhere near the ground with Mackenzie Dern, but if for whatever reason Dern manages to get a hold of her and she can pull guard, and she does pull guard, sorry, I think Tecia Torres needs to disengage as soon as possible. But if she doesn't, she can land on Dern. And Tecia Torres is a strange one because she's got 5 losses on her record. But if you look at who her losses are to, Rose Namajunas, Jessica Andrade, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Weili Zhang, and Marina Rodriguez. You've got
great fighters.
3 former champions in there. Andrade is the multiple time. 4 former champions. I forgot Andrade held the belt.
That's right.
And you got the current champion Namajunas and Marina Rodriguez, who's looking like the next contender. I mean, say what you will about Tecia Torres, but she will not turn a fight down. But I think if I'm Tecia Torres, again, like Gilbert Burns, could be back to back, circling around the octagon. Because if I'm Tecia Torres, I don't engage too much with Mackenzie Dern in long striking exchanges, because that is when she can duck underneath and get that submission. And get the fight to the ground. Tecia Torres just needs to jab out, stay circling around Mackenzie Dern, because she does not want to get caught by Mackenzie Dern, and she does not want to go to the ground with Mackenzie Dern, because Mackenzie Dern, as we know, will finish it on. If she gets the fight to the floor, she will finish it. Amanda Cooper, Hannah Cyphers, Randa Marcos, Jan DeRoba almost got finished, and then Nina Nunes, that was a phenomenal finish last time out, the armbar.
She looked
so
good that fight too. I
think Mackenzie Dern, it's difficult because she since working with Perillo, her stand-up game has come on leaps and bounds. But I just don't think it'll be enough against Tecia Torres, who can just, her footwork, and she can cut the angles and get out of there when needs be. And I think, Tecia Torres probably wins this one by a fairly boring unanimous decision, unfortunately.
I'll agree with it. Definitely, it's going to be boring, no matter who wins, who loses, because I think it's a fairly well matched. But yeah, I'm picking Torres as well. Just more veteranship, knows how to, and I think she's gotten a little bit better as well in the terms of being a smarter fighter. Whereas Mackenzie Dern in her last fight, main eventing, 5-round, it looks like she almost went backwards. Like, I don't know. She didn't look good. She was striking while looking at the floor. Like, her corner man told her, keep your eyes open when you're punching. That's not advice for a main event fighter who's top ranked.
Yeah, for sure.
That's advice that you give an amateur kid who's like in his first fight. Right?
On the pads, on the pads, not even. And I agree, but I think, with Tecia Torres, I think she has come on leaps and bounds. You can't go, 15, 20 minutes, 25 minutes with, she's never been finished. And she's gone the distance with Andrade. She's gone the distance with Michelle Waterson in a victory. She's gone the distance with Namajunas, Joanna, Weili Zhang, Marina Rodriguez. Angela Hill last time out. You don't go the distance with these women without improving your MMA game mentally, as far as being able to manage the fight is concerned. And I think that's going to show against Mackenzie Dern, who still, let's be honest, is quite raw as far as an MMA fighter is concerned. She's been handed favourable matchups, and the 2 favourable matchups she hasn't been handed in Amanda Ribas and Marina Rodriguez have worked against her.
Oh, I totally co-sign. Anything else on this UFC card before we move to Gennadiy Golovkin?
There's a couple of fighters on the card that I'm excited for. Kate Hanson returns. She entered the UFC with a lot of hype. She won her first fight. She's got back-to-back losses now. Got Alexia Oleinik, who's hopefully just going to get another Ezekiel choke, because that's crazy. Mickey Gall returns after pretty dominated by Alex Morano. Mickey Gall, similar to a Sage Northcutt, obviously they did fight each other. Entered the UFC on the back of the CM Punk hype and beating CM Punk. He then beat Sage Northcutt, but he's lost to Randy Brown, he's lost to Sanchez, he's lost to Perry, lost to Moreno last time out, so it's difficult. But he's fighting Mike Malott, I think the UFC debut, so expect Mickey Gall to pick up another victory. We've got Jairzinho Rosenstruik back in facing Marcin Tybura. I mean, Piggy Boy is always exciting. I just wish he had a takedown defense. And what I'm most worried about on this card is unfortunately for her, is the bantamweight return of Aspen Ladd, who at one point was probably the hottest prospect in women's mixed martial arts. 7-0, big finishes over Lena Landsberg and Tonya Evinger, then beat Sajara Eubanks. She was knocked out in 16 seconds by Jermaine Durandamy. She was then dominated by Yana Kunitskaya before she managed to get the finish. But then, she torn her ACL and her MCL. She then pulled out of the Macy Chiasson fight with weight cutting issues. She made weight, but didn't. The fight was cancelled on the day. She then went 5 rounds with Norma Dumont and featherweight that was, and lost that fight. And now she returns against Raquel Pennington, which that's not an easy fight for Aspen Ladd. Raquel Pennington is taking it on short notice, but Raquel Pennington's on a 3-fight win streak. Aspen Ladd cannot afford to pick up another loss because, that hype goes. If she picks up another loss, that fight goes. And it'll be interesting to see how she manages this, whether she just comes in and looks to bull rush Raquel Pennington, get her to the floor and work her ground game, because Aspen Ladd's stand-up is, again, for want of a better word, pretty atrocious. But yeah, she's got that horrible style that it looks awkward. But let's hope Aspen Ladd can bounce back with a victory, because I still think at 27 she still can have a future at bantamweight.
Totally agree with you. It's a good fight card. I think it's one of those, maybe not stay up for this entire event, but watch the event without having any results spoiled, I think, is this level. Like it's a really good fight card. But I do want to jump into the Gennadiy Golovkin and the Ryota Murata fight this weekend. I think you know a lot about it. We have the WBA super middleweight, the IBF and IBO middleweight titles will be on the line. Ryota Murata is a Olympic gold medalist in boxing, title holder, a couple of losses in his career, whereas Gennadiy Golovkin, it's just so hard not to pick Gennadiy in this fight. His only loss was a bad one to Canelo Alvarez, 36 wins by knockout in his career. He's, again, I think, a silver medalist in the Olympics. This is a fun fight, but Gennadiy all day?
All day. The only thing that plays for Murata, I think, is that it's in Japan, but even then, I don't think it makes too much of a difference for Gennadiy. I think, he hasn't fought since December. It's been about just shy of a year and a half since he's last fought. But since fighting and losing to Canelo, he's fought Steve Rolls. Steve Rolls is what he is. Derevyanchenko, that's a very good win in my opinion. But it also, Golovkin just seems to be ticking over. At 36, I think he is. 39. He's 39 now. He just seems to be ticking over until Alvarez potentially makes a comeback to anywhere in and around Golovkin's weight. And Canelo won't make middleweight again. It'll have to be a super middleweight title or super middleweight. The fight will have to be at super middleweight. 39, I don't really think that Gennadiy Golovkin can go for that much longer, to be honest. I do think he probably finishes Murata this weekend, unfortunately for Murata, who, he does know how to, of course, being an Olympic gold medalist, he knows how to box, but his 2 losses, he's come back and got the win over the 2 guys, Hassan and Dam, who obviously I just know him as getting knocked out by Carlin Smith, and then Rob Brandt, who's, again, Brandt is what he is. It's his biggest fight was facing and then losing to Murata. So I think fairly straightforward fight for Golovkin. But with that being said, how motivated is Golovkin in this one? And I think you do have to look at what's next for Golovkin at 39. He's got the 41-1 record, that draw, obviously the loss to Canelo. I don't see a trilogy fight going to. It all depends how this fight plays out. If he absolutely dominates Murata, I think it entices Canelo into a third fight. But Canelo's up at cruiserweight at the moment. He's up at light heavyweight. He's up at light heavyweight at the moment. Canelo's not coming down in weight to face a Golovkin for no belts. He's coming down in weight to face Golovkin for all the belts, and Golovkin unfortunately doesn't have all the belts as it stands.
Yeah, it was hard. I wanted to have some really interesting breakdown and man, this Murata kid, this is the one. But the more you look at it, the more you realize this is really a great fight for Golovkin. It is in Saitama, which means it's a reasonable time here in the UK. It says ring walk should be 1 p.m, with the event starting about 10 a.m. here in GMT. That was great. I'm gonna watch this one live. This is gonna be a lot of fun.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And that's the good thing. But we've got the frustrating Ryan Garcia obviously returns this weekend. He took best part of a year and a bit out through for personal reasons. But he's coming off the
big celebrity. I don't know what
else to say. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But he's coming off the biggest and most impressive win of his career when he knocked out Luke Campbell. He finished Luke Campbell last time out, having been dropped, and he faces Emmanuel Tagogi. I mean, the guy's only fought outside of Ghana twice. Yes, it was once in his last fight, and he is on a 32 fight winning streak. He lost his debut, and since then has won 32 straight fights. But he lost his debut back in 2004. I mean, he's fought outside of. I just can't. Regardless of it could be. 32-0 in his last 32 fights, impressive. Hasn't fought since November 2020.
He's smaller coming in as well.
He's smaller,
yeah,
and he's only fought outside of Ghana twice. That's the main thing for me. I think it's the fight for Ryan Garcia to come back, because obviously we've got Devin Haney and George Kambosos going at it for all the belts in Australia.
Yeah.
Later on this year, and Ryan Garcia needs wins to get him back in that conversation. I think the Jojo Diaz fight would have been far more interesting for me, which was the fight that was announced previously for Garcia. This fight is a Ryan Garcia knockout, probably in the first 3 rounds, just to get him back in there, back used to being under the lights, as it were.
Totally disagree. I can't believe you don't know about Ghana boxing. You're acting like Ghana boxing is some third-rate man. Ghana boxing is the biggest secret in the combat sports world. I'm surprised you haven't heard about this. Come on.
I mean, I'm just looking down the guy's record, and from 2014 to 2019, he fought in 2 arenas. It was only 2 arenas inside of Ghana, and it was inside of the same city inside of Ghana.
Yeah, I don't know. This is like, if you scroll, they scrolled really far down the list of guys who are technically ranked to find this opponent for him. This was one of the first guys of someone in the top 10. They had to scroll dang far down to find.
I mean, Tango. The fact that the guys, no disrespect, because if he's got he's getting in there and he's doing what needs to be done, but there's fights inside of the top 10 that there's better Ghanaian fighters. Richard Comey is in the top, ranked in the top 10 for most of the governing bodies. You've just got a lot of I don't want to disrespect the guy, but you've got a lot of better fighters who could have been, Jorge Linares is a fight that Ryan Garcia could have, because at the end of the day, Jorge Linares fought and did well against the likes of Luke Campbell, and Linares is very much, he's a gatekeeper now to the upper echelons of the division. He lost to Devin Haney by decision, so now if Ryan Garcia goes in there and beats Jorge Linares by finish, it makes Ryan Garcia and builds Ryan Garcia up. I just don't know if this fight was right for Ryan Garcia, but like I said, I'm not mad about it, because it gets Ryan Garcia back into the ring after a tough year in his personal life, and I think he gets like I say, I think he gets the knockout within the first 3 rounds.
Well, let me explain. So I am supporting Ghana in the World Cup, and I'm supporting Ghana in this fight because I like to dream. I like to hope. We need hope in this. I don't know if Ghana even qualified for the World Cup. Let me take a quick peek. Actually,
I think they did.
they
I
did. Yeah,
think
Group H. Oh, they're gonna get Portugal, Ghana, Uruguay, and South Korea. That's a good group. Actually, that's a pretty strong one.
That's. I mean, that could be a big year for Ghana if you can pull the upset off this weekend and then pull off the upset. In the World Cup, but unfortunately for Ghanaians all over the world, I know we've got a big Ghanaian following for this podcast. I don't think it's going to happen for you guys.
All of our Ghana fans were sorry. Did you see? So the World Cup, Canada finally qualified for the first time, and they're in Belgium, Morocco, Croatia. Because Canada won't even get a win. The second time in history they've ever qualified. England is in with Iran, US, and the winner of Ukraine, Scotland, Wales. So England gets a pass. That's a strong.
We're through already. Yeah,
it's an easy group.
That's already written in the stars for the English, and it could be a big year. We'll get Darren Till, Anthony Joshua, and Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury will knock out Dillian White, on the 23rd. Anthony Joshua will probably finish Alexander Usyk. Will win the World Cup. We'll probably get Darren Till. Michael Bisping will make the return. It'll be the best. Leon Edwards. Molly McCann will probably hold another belt. Should be a 2-weight world champion. So it's looking positive for the English this year for sure.
Somehow the Ghana wins were more likely than the things you just said.
For
right,
sure.
Let's get out of here. I don't think we have anything else to cover off this weekend. Frazer, I'm gonna have your articles down.
No, I think it's just the UFC this weekend and a little bit of boxing that we've broken down. So.
All right, let's get out of here for the week, folks. Have a wonderful week from MMA Sucka.
Nice one, guys.
Frazer,
Cheers.
Krohn. We'll talk to you folks soon.
See ya.